Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Vermont Academy of Arts and Sciences Fellows Luncheon. We have a distinguished group here today, and look forward to introducing everyone to our new fellows. I'm Jeff Marshall, and I helped organize the event. I'm going to turn the mic over to our president, Kevin Fleming.
Thank you, Jeff. I want to make a special thank you to Jeff Marshall for his help setting this up in this wonderful venue. We have some great wait staff here helping us out. Hopefully you can enjoy the food and the drinks and the companionship. But I do want to special thanks to Jeff Marshall, if everybody could give him a hand for that. And also, behind the scenes, the nominating committee of the Vermont Academy of Arts and Sciences includes Connell Gallagher. If you want to stand up, Connie, you're welcome to stand up and say, Rachel Johnson, I didn't see Rachel today. Connie, is Rachel not here today? Okay, so Rachel Johnson is the other member, along with Jeff, on the nominating committee. We have a number of distinguished fellows here today who have already been members of the Academy. We've inducted new members to the Academy since 1970, I think. The organization, as you can see up here, has been around since 1965. It was founded at Bennington College professor of anthropology, I believe, Lucian Hanks, and we were incorporated in North Bennington back in 1965. We have over 190 fellows that we've inducted over this 50-year period, and we are really excited to be here today to welcome a new group of fellows into the Academy. Jeff will probably tell you a little bit more about the process, but I want you also to think about who you would nominate if you could, because the way the fellowship works is that fellows who are already fellows nominate fellows to be fellows. So it's a fellowship. And so we're just really honored to be the organization that supports this fellowship. I would like to just say a few things about the Academy. If you haven't heard about it before, I know we have a fairly low profile, but we're getting up there in terms of a profile, much thanks to our Vice President, Claire VEACH. Claire, you want to say hi? Claire, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Kevin Fleming. I introduced myself to many of you. I'm the president, and Claire is vice president. But also, she has this incredible talent for websites. And she has really put together a great website, VAAS.us. It shouldn't be too hard to remember if you want to get online and take a look at it. But we are an organization that promotes the arts and the sciences in the state. We are a subsidiary of the National Association of Academies of Science, the NAAS. Every state has one. Most every state, I believe, has an academy. But not all of them are academies of arts and sciences. So I think we're a little bit more inclusive on that front. We have been doing a number of things over the years. If you take a look at our website, you can see we've been around for a long time. We actually have a history that was written up to about 35 years. We probably are due for another history, and we're grateful to have some of our illustrious historians here today. Maybe they could help us updating our history. We need to bring us up to date on that. But we on the website you will find the fellows as well. There is a listing here of all the fellows of the Academy and the years in which they were inducted. Again, you can take a look at that. And the new names are actually on here, so if you're new, going to be inducted today, you are already on the list. Nobody can take you off. It's online now. Nobody can take it off of the internet. It's permanent. One other thing I'd like to point out is we are still very active, even though the last couple of years COVID has stopped us from having these kinds of gatherings. That's one of the sad things, as we know, with Dr. Levine, who is here today. We want to thank you personally for helping us through this this period of I'll call it a period of collective trauma. Okay, but we've all been going through that, and as an organization, we like to do a lot of more things in person. So hopefully, with your blessing, we'll be able to do more in-person activities over the next few years. One of those things that I'd like you to all check out, though, we have not been a dormant organization during this time. Chris Miller is currently in the audience here. Chris, you want to stand up and say hi? Chris Miller is the sculptor who did the agriculture statue on top of the State House, if you all recognize that. Chris is an incredible sculptor in both wood and stone, and he, in multiple media, by the way, lots of things. If you want to have a stone truck done for your lawn, I just want to say he does great, what do you call it, dry stone, right? Dry stone trucks with millstones for wheels, and they're just incredibly classic. So, but Chris is graciously designing and carving a monument for us, so I wanted to share that with you. There are some pictures here online. This is the starting point, some of the starting points of it. If you get a chance, go to the Granite Museum, in Barry, the Vermont Granite Museum. We have some members here. I think, Peter, you want to stand up for a second? You can kind of represent the Granite Museum today. But we have been working very closely with the Vermont Granite Museum. And right now, Chris, well, not right now, Chris is sitting here right now, but Chris is there working on the monument pretty much on a daily basis, and you can catch him carving someday if you want to stop in. This is the monument that is in honor of Fellows of the Academy, so it's my first opportunity to share it with you guys, so if you haven't seen it before, it's incredible. It's an incredible monument, incredible process. I have a couple other people I'd like to introduce. David Tomasi, standing right over there. He's also been bringing us into the electronic age, putting us on Facebook and other things like that. But he made a YouTube video. I'm going to share it, if I can. Hopefully it's not too loud. together the wonderful name. It really reminds me of like Star Wars or something like that, where we're on the move here, hopefully outward into bigger and better things. But the real reason why we're really here today is to honor our new fellows, and for that, I'd like to reintroduce Jeff Marshall. And again, just as president, I want to give you a fond welcome to the Academy. Thank you all for coming today.
Thank you, Kevin. One thing we like to do before we get started is to ask all of the folks who have previously been inducted as fellows to stand up. So I know there are a bunch of you, so let's give a hand to all of these. Thank you for being here. So we have 8 new fellows to honor and celebrate today, and there is no particular order to the list. I will be introducing some, and then I will call up others to do the honors for some of them. So I would like to start with Governor Madeleine Kunin. It's my honor to introduce Governor Kunin to you, and if you could come forward while I try to find your citation here. We are fortunate indeed that Madeleine May Kunin, born and raised in Switzerland, immigrated to the United States in 1940 and then in 1957 made Vermont her permanent home. Renowned and revered author, poet, scholar, legislator, and diplomat, Madeleine Kunin has additionally been in the forefront of fostering the role of women in government service. 4 of her major goals in public life for Vermont and beyond have long been: 1, to achieve male-female equality in both the workplace and politics; 2, to provide a safe social milieu for children; 3, to improve educational opportunities at the primary and secondary levels; and most presciently, 4, to foster environmentally sustainable development. Madeleine Kunin has at one time or another been an adjunct or visiting professor at Harvard University and Dartmouth College, and here within Vermont at Trinity, Middlebury, and St. Michael's College. Moreover, since 2014, Madeleine has been on the faculty of the University of Vermont as its James Marsh Professor at Large. Turning to the world of politics and diplomacy, Madeleine Kunin has served us here in Vermont as a representative to the General Assembly from 1972 to 78, as Lieutenant Governor from 78 to 82, and as our Governor from 1985 to 1991, being the first and still the only woman to hold that office. One of her perhaps less well-known actions as Governor was in 1989 to establish a supportive sisterhood relationship between Vermont and the Karelian Autonomous Republic of Russia, the region torn away from Finland during the Winter War of 1939-1940, and poorly treated by Russia ever since. Federally, Madeleine Kunin has been a Deputy Secretary of Education and then our ambassador to 2 sovereign states, both the Swiss Confederation from 1996 to 99 and the Principality of Liechtenstein 1997 to 99. Madeleine Kunin is the author or co-author of 7 important books, 4 nonfiction, 2 memoirs in prose and poetry, and recently released volume of poetry. Moreover, she has been responsible for the founding of 2 influential non-governmental organizations, the Institute for Sustainable Communities and Emerge Vermont, the latter supportive of women going into politics. The number of honorary degrees, 7 from Vermont institutions alone, and distinguished awards that have been bestowed upon Governor Kunin, both here and abroad, are beyond counting. It is perhaps fitting to close this encomium with an excerpt from Madeleine Kunin's proclamation at the 2018 Women's March on Montpelier. Why do we march? We march for respect. We march for equal pay. We march for the right to control our bodies. We march for a livable planet. We march for the end of violence against women. We march for health care for all. We march for public education. And we march for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Madeleine Kunin, for your contributions to public discourse on a range of issues, for your leadership in the promotion of education, and for your flowering career as a poet. The Academy is honored to welcome you as a fellow with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities.
I'm honored to be part of this organization, and thank you very much. And that's the most complete biography I've ever been introduced by. So thank you for putting it all together, and I'm happy to be in such good company with distinguished arts and science and writers and poets and the cream of the crop. Thank you so much.
Next, I would like to ask David Tomasi to come forward for our next fellow.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Mark Levine. He's the Vermont Commissioner of Health, a position to which he was appointed by Governor Phil Scott in March 2017. As noted in his biography on the Vermont Department of Health website, Dr. Levine was previously a professor of medicine at the University of Vermont, Associate Dean for Graduate Medical Education, and designated institutional official at the College of Medicine and UVM Medical Center. He also served as Vice Chair for Education in the UVM Department of Medicine. After receiving his MD at the University of Rochester, Dr. Levine served his residency in internal medicine at the University of Vermont with a fellowship in general internal medicine at the University of North Carolina. His focus, again as presented by the Department of Health, has been on health promotion and disease prevention, preventative health screening and clinical nutrition, chronic disease management, and solving complex diagnosis dilemmas. Experience that made him a great fit for the increasingly public role as a health commissioner. Among his many medical leadership roles, Commissioner Levine has served on the American College of Physicians Board of Regents and as a governor of its Vermont chapter, as vice president and president-elect of the Vermont Medical Society, and I was a long-standing member of the Vermont Department of Health's Primary Care Public Health Integration Work Group. Dr. Levine is best known for his leadership in the public health campaign against COVID-19, Thank You, prompting Governor Scott to refer him as Vermont's own Dr. Fauci. Indeed, Fauci himself said that he wished he could follow Vermont's response to COVID-19 and take it with me when I go around talking to other parts of the country. It is evident that Dr. Levine's success in leading the fight against the coronavirus in Vermont owes much not only to his medical credentials, but to the confidence he inspires among both health professionals and the general public. His command of the medical knowledge, combined with a modest demeanor, compassion, and occasionally self-deprecating humor, have lessened the fears and provided hope to Vermonters in a troubling time. Mark Levine, for your devotion to medical science and your public health leadership, the Academy is honored to welcome you as a fellow with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities.
Well, thank you very much. And I am very honored to be another new fellow in this academy. I do want to dwell on the word "and," because there's at least one other physician in the room and many others in healthcare professions. And that's all about the art and the science of medicine. And I think it's very fitting that this academy emphasizes the and its title. And clearly during the pandemic, we communicated a lot about science, which does take an element of humanism and an element of understanding public health communication. But the important point is we're always dealing with human beings, no matter what they believe or don't believe in. And the reality is science is challenging. It needs to be understood by all and embraced by all. But at the same time, there's an art to doing that. So thank you again.
We're not done yet. Dr. Mary Cushman. Dr. Mary Cushman is an international expert on the epidemiology of coagulation, inflammation, and other vascular-related domains in relation to the etiology and pathogenesis of stroke, cognitive impairment, cardiovascular diseases, and other diseases of aging. Dr. Cushman earned a BS in biology and MD from the University of Vermont, a Master in Science and Epidemiology from the Harvard University School of Public Health. Dr. Cushman conducts research and publishes a key investigator on a number of longitudinal health studies, including the reason for geographic and racial difference in stroke, multi-ethnic study of atherosclerosis, and cardiovascular health study, among others. She has been a recipient of continuous National Institutes of Health research funding for more than 20 years. Dr. Cushman is the medical director of the Thrombosis and Hemostasis program at UVM Medical Center. He's editor-in-chief of the newest journal of the International Society of Thrombosis and Hemostasis, Research and Practice Thrombosis and Hemostasis, and is the on-board director of the VM Cardio Research Institute, CVRI. In 2018, Mary was awarded the prestigious American Heart Association Population Research Prize. Furthermore, in 2018, Mary was named on the list of the world's most impactful researchers, based on the number of times her published studies have been cited by other researchers over the past decade. Researchers on the list are in the top 1% of all scholars whose work has been cited by others. The prestigious highly cited researchers list is compiled and published annually by Carbon Analytics, which uses essential science indicators, a unique compilation of science performance metrics and trend data based on scholarly paper publication counts and citation data from the Web of Science, the premier web-based environment of scientific and scholarly research literature to over 33,000 journals. Dr. Cushman was named a UVM University Scholar in 2019. Mary Cushman, for your leadership and groundbreaking research in hematology and related fields, the Academy is honored to welcome you as a fellow with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities.
Wow, thank you so much. I am just so humbled to be here, being recognized at the same time as the other new fellows of the organization, and look forward to getting to know other fellows and members of the Academy. I was thrilled to, I think somewhat randomly, be seated today at a table with Dr. Paul Crapshow, who was a professor of mine when I was in college at UVM. He taught organic chemistry to me in 1982. It was the hardest class I had to take, and I got a C. But, you know, here I am. He was very kind in informing me I was getting a C. What was a C plus? But I'm so fortunate to have come to Vermont from Massachusetts as a just barely 18-year-old person from a small town, a small homogeneous town, and to come to Vermont to go to college and stay here sort of accidentally at different phases of my life, to stay here my whole career for all of my education except for a short period in Boston. And I'm so proud to be, I'm not really a Vermonter, but I'm so proud to be a Vermonter and to be at the University of Vermont and to be able to do the work that I do. And picking up on what Mark said about the art of science, I think a lot of you maybe didn't understand all the terminology in that citation because it's very specialized, but part of the reason that I have been able to have some success in my career is because of the communication with others. It's really critical. Communication with students, communication with colleagues, creating a network, and being in the right place at the right time. And so things that I learned in college around that and beyond have been really helpful to me, and the collaboration amongst people and the interrelations you have with people that you work with are the most important thing to success. So thank you very much.
I just want to say a couple of things. The "and" is really important in Vermont Academy of Arts and Sciences. I think you get that point, but what Mary just said about being reunited with some of her professors as well, this is an organization that goes back a long time, and Paul and many others have made great contributions. And we are very lucky to have you all in the state. We had fellow Julia Alvarez a few years back, and her first oral presentation was as an undergraduate at Middlebury College at the Vermont Academy of Arts and Sciences Intercollegiate Symposium. I believe it was in 1970 something. I can't remember what year it was, but it was back in the 70s. And she brought with her the program from that symposium. It was her first oral presentation, and she went on, as you can imagine, to go on to a stellar career after that. But sometimes an academy like this has deep roots, and I'm really thankful to Paul. Paul, if you want to stand up, you can be honored for this. Paul Crapshow, of the Academy, long-standing member of the Academy and professor in Vermont. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, I would like to have Chard deNiord come forward. Chard deNiord is an author, poet, and teacher who lives in Westminster West, Vermont. He is the author of 6 books of poetry, including Asleep in the Fire, 1990, Sharp Golden Thorn, 2003, Night Mowing, 2005, The Double Truth, 2011, and Interstate, 2015. And In My Unknowing, 2020, all published by the University of Pittsburgh. He has also published 2 books of interviews with American poets, Sad Friends, Drowned Lovers, Stapled Songs, Conversations and Reflections on 20th Century American Poets, which includes interviews with Robert Bly, Lucille Clifton, Donald Hall, Galway Connell, Maxine Kunin, and Ruth Stone, among others. And I would lie to you if I could, interviews with 10 American poets. In 2017, deNiord co-edited an anthology of Vermont poetry with Sidney Lee, Roads Taken, Contemporary Vermont Poetry. He has published over 30 essays on poetry and writing in a number of journals and newspapers, including the Harvard Review, the New England Review, Poetry International, the Green Mountain Review, and the Cortland Review, among others. In 2015, he was elected as Vermont's Poet Laureate, serving from 2016 to 2019. deNiord was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and raised in Virginia. He earned a BA in Religious Studies at Lynchburg College, a Master of Divinity from Yale, and a Master of Fine Arts from the University of Iowa Writers' Workshop. He taught comparative religion and philosophy at a number of private schools, including the Putney School, before moving to Providence College. Chard is now Professor Emeritus at Providence College, where he taught English and creative writing. He has been a poetry fellow at the Somali Writers Conference and the Alan Collins Scholar in Poetry at the Red Loaf Writers Conference in Middlebury. Among his many accomplishments, Chard co-founded several writing programs, including the New England College Master of Fine Arts program in poetry. And he co-founded the Ruth Stone Foundation. He's a frequent reader in Vermont and New England. Chard deNiord, for your distinguished career as a poet, teacher, and advocate for poetry, the Academy is honored to welcome you as a fellow with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities.
Thank you, Jeffrey. This is such a great honor. I'm humbled enormously. You know, when you start out writing as a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, you have no idea where this is going to lead. It's not a profession that's always acknowledged or celebrated that much in this country, especially poetry. So, and yet, it's kind of ironic, you know, there's so much poetry at the foundation of America. It's, you know, the Declaration of Independence is a poem. The Gettysburg Address is a poem. They're prose poems, but they're poetry nonetheless. It's memorable language. It's the language we live by. So growing up, I was always enormously just humbled and intimidated by writing. And I can't thank you, Madeleine Kunin, enough. Because in 1989, after the Poet Laureateship was canceled, not in 89, actually in 63, or maybe it was 62, when Robert Frost died. And Vermont thought, there can never be another Robert Frost. So let's not have another Poet Laureate in Vermont. So in 1989, Madeleine Kunin said, we need one. And so she appointed Galway Connell. And so ever since then, there's been a Poet Laureate. So I really just want to acknowledge and thank Madeleine Kunin for the vision and the courage to do that when she was governor in 1989. So it's just one more quick comment about Virginia poets in Vermont. David Huddle, who's sitting right here, grew up just down the road from me in Lynchburg, Virginia. And of course, Ruth Stone, she's from Roanoke, Virginia. And, you know, people search for home all their lives. And the fact that these three poets, including myself, found my eventual home here in Vermont, like these other poets, is turned out not to be a surprise at all. So I feel like I found home here, and I'm just so grateful to be here, even though I'm in southern Vermont, away from the mountains. I feel so much like a Vermonter now that I've lived here for, I don't know, way over 20 years. And I guess the last thing I want to do is I want to acknowledge the creatures of Vermont. I want them to be a part of this fellowship as well. We humans get a little hubristic about, you know, our awards and our views of ourselves. So I thought I would just read a very short poem about an animal that I would like to welcome into this fellowship of Vermont poets and scientists as well, as odd as that might sound. And it's the state bird of Vermont. Who had the vision to name the hermit thrush the state bird of Vermont? I don't know, but I'm so happy that he or she did. So I'm going to unofficially nominate the hermit thrush to be a fellow. And here's my tribute. To hear and hear. The hermit thrush is set for 6 to sing his song as if it were the end of the world, and he was stirred by dusk to sing the same sweet song again and again in the understory, as if to say, it's neither words nor meaning that matters in the end, but the quality of sound, as if we were deafened by the sun and needed his song as a key to unlock our ears, to hear and understand, to see and see, knowing that this one day is the end for now, which it is, he claims, with a song just loud enough to pierce the woods until the night descends like 1,000 veils, and then just one. Thank you very much.
And next, I would like to invite Michael Sherman to come forward. Michael Sherman, historian, editor, and former director of the Vermont Historical Society, is one of the leading scholars of Vermont's history and its people. When he became the new director of the Vermont Historical Society in 1985, Michael faced the challenge of leading an organization with a heavy commitment to public engagement and scholarly initiatives, while teaching himself about the peculiar ways of Vermonters. In 1995, Michael transitioned from his role as director to become editor of the Society's scholarly journal, Vermont History, a role in which he has continued to this day. The job of editor requires enormous intellectual energy, patience, and tact, all qualities Michael possesses in abundance. He brought to the job an understanding of the balance the journal needs to achieve between high-quality scholarship and appeal to an audience of wide interest within the study of Vermont. Subjects of articles published range from the exploits of Vermont's early European settlers to the Green Mountain Parkway controversy, from early industrial enterprises to tourism and the back to the land movement. There were special issues compiling papers presented at VHS conferences on antebellum Vermont, the future of Vermont history, and the Champlain Quadricentennial. Over the last 27 years, Michael has edited an average of around 7 scholarly articles per year for Vermont history, and that comes to around 190. Having to edit other historians' work did not prevent Michael from producing his own scholarly articles. In 2001, he and Nancy Boone published a study of Vermont Civil War hospitals. And in 2013, he published a fine article on Vermont's conscientious objectors, both in Vermont history. As important as the Vermont history editing and writing have been, Michael's greatest achievements may be the series of books he has edited, co-edited, and authored that address the enduring questions of what it means to be a Vermonter. These begin with a 1991 book, A More Perfect Union, Vermont Becomes a State, 1777 to 1816. The Statehood Bicentennial Volume with numerous contributors. That record continues with We Vermonters, Reflections on the Past, co-edited with Jenny Versteeg in 1992. The Character of Vermont, 20th Anniversary Reflections, co-edited with 3 others in 1996. And Imagining Vermont, Values and Visions for the Future, the final report of the Council on the Future of Vermont, produced by the Vermont Council on Rural Development in 2009. Perhaps his most single important contribution to understanding Vermont's past is the brilliant history he co-authored with Gene Sessions and P. Jeffrey Potash, Freedom and Unity, A History of Vermont. In acknowledging but not falling prey to the tradition of Vermont exceptionalism, Michael and his co-authors produced the most professional and readable history of Vermont in its more than 225-year history. Michael Sherman, for your distinguished career as a historian, writer, and editor, the Academy is honored to welcome you as a fellow with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities.
Thank you. It is indeed a great honor to be admitted to this organization and with such dignified co-fellows right now. I sometimes think that the role of an editor is something like a midwife, that you take some cooperation and some help to bring an idea fully formed into the world and available to the world. And I've been very fortunate to work with many wonderful scholars, makers of history, participants of history in one way or another, to bring our past to a wide audience, to make it see how it's relevant. And some of the articles you mentioned point to the fact that history lives because we're always finding new questions to ask. And it's the responsibility, I think, of an editor and of a historian to make those new questions, the questions that we then address and make available to a wide public. So I have to thank all the people with whom I have worked as a colleague, as an editor, as a co-writer. I checked with my kids about whether I have always been tactful and patient, and they maintained a discreet silence about that. But it's something that I too had to learn myself, and I'm very, very grateful to all the help I had. And I'll just add one thing. When I came here in 1985, I really did know almost nothing about Vermont. In fact, one of the questions at my interview was, well, how often have you been here? And I said, well, to my recollection, only twice. Once to visit my PhD advisor, Hannah Gray, who had a home at the time in Peacham. And once when I was 4, maybe 5 years old, my mother took me to Fort Ticonderoga. There was this deadly silence. When I returned home to Wisconsin, which is where I live, I looked at the map and I said, well, that's the end of that job. They hired me for some reason. And I asked Sam Hand, who was the president of the society at the time, well, how did you do that? I mean, and he said, well, we figured you'd find out where it is anyway. question about what history I knew. It was practically nothing. I knew about Ethan Allen. And I asked about that too, and Sam said, oh, well, you'll learn it, and here's my book, and it'll teach you everything you need to know. So I've been very lucky in my friendships and my colleagueships. I've been very happy as the director of the Vermont Historical Society, and now as the editor of its journal. And I am very happy to be admitted to this fellowship. Thank you so much.
Okay, next up is Giovanna Peebles.
There's actually the spirit of my mother is here, and Maria Franca Morselli. I'm wearing her necklace.
And many of us remember her from her days at UVM, where she was a force to be reckoned with.
And she was a fellow in 1991, 92.
Giovanna Peebles is an archaeologist who devoted her professional career in Vermont to public education and engagement, while establishing a solid foundation for archaeological research. As the first Vermont state archaeologist, Giovanna built a program to identify, investigate, and document archaeological sites throughout the state. She helped establish the Vermont Archaeology Museum, which serves not only as a storage center for artifacts, but an educational center for school children and the curious of all ages. Giovanna grew up in South Burlington and earned a bachelor's degree in archaeology at Cornell, followed by a master's degree from the University of Idaho. She returned to Vermont in 1976 to fill the newly created position of state archaeologist. With grant money available from the federal government and with her own infectious enthusiasm, she built a program that enabled teams of trained archaeologists, students, and volunteers to systematically survey and conduct digs at identified sites. New laws requiring archaeological surveys at certain construction sites uncovered thousands of prehistoric and historic finds, some of which led to significant changes to our understanding of Vermont's past. Early in her career, Giovanna confronted the claims of pseudoscientists that a number of stone chambers, mostly abandoned in Vermont's hilly backwoods, were built by ancient Celtic settlers. She pulled together a number of experts to examine the evidence and present their findings at a conference. The experts concluded decisively that the stone chambers were mostly 19th century root cellars and provided no evidence of Celtic habitation. These results were documented in Giovanna's 1980 monograph, Vermont Stone Chambers, an Inquiry into Their Past. Always aware of the need for public support and engagement, Giovanna spent much time speaking to school groups, historical societies, legislators, and any others who would listen to the stories that archaeological artifacts tell. Journalists quickly learned to get in touch with Giovanna when ordinary citizens stumbled upon possibly significant finds. And she learned to be in touch with journalists when fieldwork commissioned by her department turned out something interesting. Her devotion to archaeology, to making archaeology relevant to everyone, was a key part of her ongoing success. This devotion culminated in the establishment of the Vermont Archaeology Museum at the Barrie History Center in 2006. In the old Spalding School, sharing space with the Vermont Historical Society, and more recently the State Library, Giovanna resolved two long-standing problems: the need for space to store items retrieved from digs around the state, and the need for the public to interact with these materials in a meaningful way. Throughout this busy career, Giovanna helped to mentor a new generation of archaeologists. And I think, as with all of our fellows, we could go on and on. But I will stop here and say, Giovanna Peebles, for your contributions to the study of Vermont's archaeological past and your leadership in making that knowledge accessible to the public. The Academy is honored to welcome you as a fellow with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities.
I mean, wow. I'm really beyond humbled. I know the people who were inducted today, and they are some of the most extraordinary people in Vermont. And I know a lot of the existing fellows, and I'm just overwhelmed with this honor. So thank you. I have no idea who came up with the idea of honoring me, but I want to thank that individual. I just want to thank my family, who've always been my heart, my foundation. David, Sterling, and Sky are here with us today. Thank my mom. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She was a legendary UVMer, professor. David Tomasi, what's the Italian expression, apple not falling far from the tree?
Buon sangue non mente.
Good blood doesn't lie. It's the Italian expression, which I've never heard until today. You think I know my Italian? Anyway, so her spirit is here, but I did want to say some interesting thing. I did study your website, David, beautiful job on the website. In 1977, Castleton State University hosted a conference on the stone chambers. It was the largest gathering ever outside of a political convention. There were 700 people there. What blew me away is that the Vermont Academy of Arts and Sciences was the host, not the host, the sponsor for such a crazy day. And I just had no idea that the Academy was involved in that. There was a professor at Castleton who subsequently got involved with Sasquatch studies, and he absolutely believed that ancient Celts, about, I don't know, let's see, 1000 BC, came to Vermont and built all the stone chambers. Anyway, the Academy, not in maybe its finest moment. So, we've all taken a lot of time, so I'm just going to stop and I'm going to say thank you. Thank you for such an honor.
Complimenti.
Grazie mille.
Thank you for reminding us of that really significant participation of the Academy. We have two remaining new fellows to honor, and unfortunately, I think both of them were unable to be here today, but we're going to read their citations nevertheless. And unless Emily Bernard has arrived, no, she hasn't, but I would like to ask David Huddle to come up to read her citation. David?
Yeah, I'm coming.
You've got your own copy. Here.
When I was in the 8th grade, the phys ed teacher hated what he had to teach. So he found out that I could read fast. And then I was the reader for the whole time. That's what we'll do here. Emily Bernard is the Julian Lindsay Green and Gold Professor of English at the University of Vermont, and the author of numerous books, articles, and essays, the winner of many distinguished awards for her writing. Professor Bernard received her bachelor and doctoral degrees from Yale University. She began teaching at the University of Vermont in 2001, and since that time has inspired, challenged, and befriended thousands of students, colleagues, and readers through her teaching and writing. The New York Times selected her first book, Remember Me to Harlem, The Letters of Langston Hughes and Carl Van Vechten, as a notable book of the year. Her recent memoir, Black is the Body, Stories from My Mother's Time and Mine, won the Isherwood Prize for Autobiographical Prose from the Los Angeles Times. Other well-received books include Some of My Best Friends, Writing on Interracial Friendships in Carl Van Vechten, and the Harlem Renaissance. As noted in her website biography, Professor Bernard has received fellowships and grants from Yale University, Harvard University, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Vermont Arts Council, the Vermont Studio Center, and the MacDowell Colony. In Black is the Body, Professor Bernard personalizes the themes that dominate her scholarly work. The quest for interracial understanding, the struggles around defining Blackness as personal and cultural identity, and the powerful examples of the great ones, writers and artists, as well as family matriarchs who came before. Over the course of 20 years, Emily Bernard has emerged as a leading scholar of Black literature and as a beloved teacher and colleague at the University of Vermont. I can say one thing for absolutely certain, and that is that Black is the Body is one of the most profound, moving books I have ever read. Emily Bernard, for your contributions for teaching and to scholarly literature, for biography and autobiography, the Academy is honored to welcome you as a fellow with all rights, privileges, and responsibilities.
Thank you, David. Last but not least, I'm going to ask Connie Gallagher to read the citation for Greg Sanford. And Greg emailed a response to me, which Connie can read as well.
Well, I learned at least 3 things today, just talking to people. I learned from Chard deNiord that he came from Lynchburg, and that the founder of Lynchburg is responsible for the term lynching. I learned that the Vermont State Library is now in the building with the Historical Society. I've been a librarian in Vermont for 50 years, and that library was always in Montpelier. And the last thing, well, not the last thing, but another thing I learned is that Paul Crapcho's trained half the scientists in the room. I'm very pleased to say some words about Greg Sanford because I came in 1970 and I was the curator of manuscripts at the UVM library. And Greg came a few years later, so our careers kind of grew up at the same time. Well, Greg is he lives in Plainfield, Vermont, and he's too ill to come. That's why he's not here. He would be here otherwise. Greg Sanford came to Vermont from Connecticut in the mid-1970s to work on a master's degree in American history at UVM. He arrived shortly after UVM received the papers of U.S. Senator George D. Aiken from Washington, and his future advisor, Professor Samuel B. Hand, was anxious to find a student to work on those papers. Greg fit the bill. And after a few years, he produced a master's thesis entitled The Presidential Boomlet of Governor George D. Aiken, 1937-39, or You Can't Get There From Here. After graduation, Greg served as the coordinator for the new Center for Research on Vermont at UVM, and would later become the chair of its board of directors. Next, he was hired as a Mellon grant to coordinate the MIT Oral History program at the school's Institute Archives. He returned a year later as assistant director of the George D. Aiken Oral History Project under the distinguished oral historian Charles T. Morrissey, and produced the fine George D. Aiken Oral History Memoir in 1981. He was a busy bee. A year later, he was hired by Vermont Secretary of State James Douglas to be the editor of state papers. That office functioned as a kind of state archives. Over a period of years, Greg raised the level of the program by combining public records with the editor's office to create the Vermont State Archives, and fought to have a new building to house the combined programs in 2008. Under his leadership, the archive staff embraced technology and created a rich website teeming with information to bring the archives closer to the legislators, the press, and the public. The Society of American Archivists honored the Vermont State Archives with its prestigious Hamer Award in 2002. Greg also created a newsletter, Voices from the Vault, to publicize the archives and to educate the legislators about the holdings. As Vermont State Archivist, Greg led the Vermont Public Records Advisory Board, which included archivists from throughout the state, and the Vermont State Board of the National Historic Publications and Records Commission, which provided grants to all of the small Vermont historical societies. Single-handedly, Greg rescued a collection of some 60,000 documents relating to the founding of Vermont, which had been scorched in a fire and lay languishing in a vault in the New York State Library. And he won an NEH grant to process and microfilm his collection. Greg served on many boards and commissions in the state, region, and nationally, and was president of the New England Archivists in 1988, and received their Distinguished Service Award in 2002. He has written dozens of articles in local, regional, and national publications, and edited volumes of state records, and has given numerous talks and lectures on Vermont history and archival theory. Greg Sanford received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Center for Research on Vermont for all of his contributions to Vermont history. And he retains the informal title, quote, Dean of the History of State Government in Vermont. D. Gregory Sanford, for your commitment to Vermont history and the history of state government, and for your work of preserving this history and making it accessible to the public, we are proud to welcome you as a Fellow of the Vermont Academy of Arts and Sciences with all of the rights, privileges, and responsibilities. So Greg writes to Jeffrey Marshall, as we discussed, a cabal of recalcitrant body parts is currently restricting my ability to go out into the world. It is a shame, since I really wanted to attend the Academy's luncheon. I was honored to be named a fellow and humbled when I read through the list of current fellows. They possess impressive resumes and achievements. Many of them played crucial roles in my development as a researcher and archivist. What I will be missing is the opportunity to converse with so many people I admire. Living in isolation up here on the hill, I will miss the intellectual curiosity and insights inherent in such conversations. Please extend to the Academy and the Fellows my regrets and admiration for their collective work across many disciplines. Sincerely, D. Gregory Sanford.
Thank you, Connie. And that concludes our celebration of new fellows for this year. And let me turn the mic back over to Kevin, if you have any concluding remarks.
I certainly can conclude our day today. I hope that you've had a wonderful day joining us. I can't imagine a finer day in Vermont. The outdoors beckon, I think, to go out and see the foliage. If you're here and you want to just go out and enjoy Vermont, it's a perfect day to do it. But I also want to say that the company in this room has been unrivaled. There have been maybe bigger gatherings, but not quite as illustrious as in this room today. Thank you all for not just today, but your lifetime of contributions to this state of Vermont. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for being here, and hope that you come to future events hosted by the Vermont Academy of Arts and Sciences. Who knows what we're going to bring up next?